I used to believe love meant endurance. I believed that if you loved someone deeply, you stayed quiet when things hurt. You waited. You adjusted. You carried the weight, so others could feel light. My name is Anna Carter, and when this story began, I was 34 years old. I had always been the kind of woman who believed in loyalty, family, and peace. I believed that love was not loud. It was patient. It was quiet. It was something you protected even from yourself. For a long time, my life felt safe. The relationship I was in did not begin with pain. It began with warmth, with calm, with the kind of love that feels like coming home after a long day. We shared small routines. Morning coffee at the same time every day. Quiet dinners where no one needed to speak too much. Simple smiles across the table. Long silences that did not feel empty. I felt chosen. I felt included. I felt like I belonged somewhere. I trusted that love. I trusted it so much that I never questioned it. At first, everything felt balanced. I gave, and I felt appreciated. I listened, and I felt heard. We talked about the future in soft ways, never rushing, never forcing dreams to grow too fast. I remember thinking, this is what peace feels like. But peace can change quietly. The first crack did not arrive like a storm. It arrived like a small shadow, easy to ignore, easy to explain away. There were moments when I felt less seen, when my words were answered with silence, when promises were delayed, then forgotten. I noticed it, but I did not question it. I told myself it was stress. I told myself it was life. I told myself love does not need attention all the time. I told myself it was nothing, but nothing has a way of growing. Slowly, I began to feel like I was standing slightly outside the relationship, watching it instead of living inside it. There were decisions made without me, plans that changed without explanation, smiles that felt polite instead of warm. Still, I stayed quiet. Because love, I believed, meant understanding. Inside me, questions began to form. But I pushed them down. I did not want to be difficult. I did not want to seem ungrateful. I did not want to break the calm that surrounded us. This was when the moral dilemma first appeared. I began to realize the truth not all at once, but piece by piece. And with that truth came fear. If I spoke, it could hurt our family. If I spoke, it could change how others saw me. If I spoke, I might be called selfish, sensitive, or dramatic. If I stayed silent, everything would look fine. Outside, there was peace. Inside, there was noise. Every night, my thoughts became louder. I replayed moments. I searched for meaning in simple words. I wondered if I was imagining things. I asked myself questions I was afraid to answer. Am I asking for too much? Am I being unfair? Is this just what love becomes over time? So I made a choice. I chose silence, not because I was weak, but because I loved deeply, because I believed protecting others was more important than protecting myself. I told myself, if I endure, maybe things will change. That thought became my comfort. And my prison. The nights became longer. Sleep came later. When I closed my eyes, my chest felt heavy, like something was pressing down on me. I started doubting my own feelings. I stopped trusting my instincts. I smiled when I felt tired. I agreed when I wanted to speak. I became very good at hiding. From others, from myself. The betrayal was no longer subtle. It was not loud, but it was clear. There was a moment, a simple moment that changed everything. A moment so small that no one else would notice it. But I did. In that moment, I realized the truth I had been avoiding. I was no longer part of the love I was protecting. I was protecting something that no longer protected me. The silence I chose was slowly taking pieces of me away. My confidence, my voice, my sense of worth. I stood there, feeling calm on the outside, breaking on the inside, and for the first time, I allowed myself to admit it. Staying quiet was not keeping the peace. It was costing me myself. That was the moment I understood something I had never wanted to face. Staying silent was also a decision. And it was changing me. The breaking point did not come with shouting. It came with silence. It came on an ordinary evening. When the house looked peaceful and the world looked normal. The lights were warm. The air smelled like dinner. Everything felt calm until I realized. I could not remember the last time I felt truly safe inside my own heart. I stood in the kitchen, holding a plate I didn't even want to eat. My hands were steady, but something inside me was shaking. I had been carrying too much for too long. I had been swallowing my feelings like they were mistakes. And suddenly, a sentence rose inside me clear and heavy. Like truth, finally finding a voice. I was protecting everyone, except myself. That line hurt because it was honest. It hurt because it showed me how far I had gone just to keep things quiet. I looked at my reflection in the dark window. I saw my face, but I didn't feel like I recognized the woman staring back. She looked tired. Not the tired that sleep can fix. The tired that comes from pretending. In that moment, I knew something had to change. Not tomorrow. Not after another apology. Not after another promise. Now. I didn't feel brave. I felt afraid. My stomach felt tight. My throat felt dry. My heart beat too fast, like it was trying to warn me. I walked into the living room and sat down. The room was quiet, but my mind was loud. I could hear every fear I had been avoiding. What if they deny it? What if they blame me? What if I lose everything? But then I asked myself a different question, one I had never dared to ask before. What if I stay silent and lose myself completely? That question was sharper than fear. So I spoke. Not with anger. Not with drama. Just honesty. My voice trembled, and I hated that it trembled. I wanted to sound strong. I wanted to sound calm. But the truth had been locked inside me for so long. It came out fragile. I said what I had been feeling. I said what I had been seeing. I said the words I had been saving for nights when no one could hear me cry. I didn't accuse. I didn't attack. I simply told the truth of my experience. I told them how small I had been feeling. How invisible. How I had been standing inside love, but slowly turning into a stranger. When I finished, the room felt different. Like the air had changed. I waited for understanding. I waited for softness. I waited for them to finally see me. But what came back was not what I hoped for. There was a pause, long and cold. Then came the reaction. Not loud, not violent. Just distance. A look that said, "Why are you doing this now?" A sigh that said, "You're making it bigger than it is." Words that didn't touch my pain, only pushed it away. In that moment, I felt something break inside me again. But this time, it broke in a cleaner way. Like a rope snapping after being pulled too tight for too long. I realized I had been waiting for permission to matter, and I wasn't going to get it. The next days were heavy. The house still looked normal. Life still moved forward. People still smiled. Work still needed my time. The sun still rose. But inside me, everything felt raw. There was emotional loss, not just the fear of losing the relationship, but the deeper loss of realizing how alone I had been while trying to keep everything fine. It wasn't only grief for them. It was grief for myself. For the woman who tried so hard to be easy to love. For the woman who thought silence was the price of peace. At night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. Sometimes I cried quietly. The way I always had, like my tears were something shameful. Sometimes I didn't cry at all. Sometimes I just felt empty. And that emptiness scared me more than sadness. Because emptiness felt like giving up. I started doubting myself again. Did I do the right thing? Was I too harsh? Was I selfish? But then I remembered the feeling in my chest before I spoke. That heavy, choking pressure. And I knew I couldn't go back there. Time passed. Not quickly. But slowly, something unexpected happened. Even though the outside consequences were painful, something inside me became quieter. Not the quiet of hiding, the quiet of relief. I noticed it in small moments. I could breathe a little deeper. I could sit alone without feeling like I was failing. I could wake up without the same tight fear wrapping around my heart. I was still hurt, yes, but I wasn't disappearing anymore. And that mattered. One morning, I made coffee and stood by the window. The world outside looked the same, but I felt different. I realized I had spent years trying to be chosen by someone else. Now, for the first time in a long time, I was choosing myself. It wasn't a loud decision. It didn't come with a big celebration. It came with small acts. Saying no without explaining too much. Not apologizing for having feelings. Not chasing comfort from someone who had been comfortable with my silence. And then came the most surprising part. I started forgiving myself. Not for speaking, but for waiting so long. I used to think forgiveness meant accepting what someone did to you. But I learned something deeper. Forgiveness also means stopping the war inside your own heart. It means saying, I didn't know better then, but I know better now. And if you are standing where I once stood, if you are carrying silence like it is your duty, I want you to hear this clearly. Love that demands silence is not love. Truth may hurt in the beginning, yes, but self-betrayal hurts longer. It hurts in the slow way, the quiet way, the way that steals your identity, one small piece at a time. Speaking up did not give me a perfect ending. Some things changed forever. Some people didn't understand me. Some love didn't survive the truth. But something else survived. I survived, and more than that, I returned to myself. I didn't become cold. I didn't become cruel. I simply became honest. And in that honesty, I found a kind of peace I had never felt before. Not the peace of keeping everyone happy. The peace of knowing I was no longer abandoning my own heart. In the end, I didn't lose everything. I found myself.